The cold night air bit into my skin as I stood on the porch, clutching my newborn son, Noah. Behind me, the door slammed shut, Lucas's harsh words still echoing in my ears. "You and the baby are on your own now. Get out." My heart pounded as I looked at the packed bags on the ground, my world shattering in an instant. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to move, whispering to my son, "We'll be okay. I promise." I stepped onto the empty street, each step heavier than the last. The silence was broken only by Noah's soft whimpers, until I heard footsteps behind me. I froze, my heart racing. Turning slowly, I felt my body tremble with fear at what I saw. "Hello, my name is Sophia, and not long ago, I thought I had it all." I whispered those words to myself as I sat in the small room Grace had arranged for me at the shelter. Noah, wrapped in a soft blanket, slept peacefully in a borrowed crib. His tiny breaths rose and fell, a quiet rhythm that kept me grounded in the chaos of my thoughts. I was 28 years old, a freelance graphic designer who worked from the comfort of the home Lucas and I shared. My job allowed me the freedom to balance my passion for creating and my dream of building a family. I loved what I did, and I was proud of the work I put out into the world. But above all, I had loved the life I thought I was creating with Lucas. Lucas and I met 4 years ago at a networking event. He was magnetic, confident, and ambitious. Everything I thought I wanted in a partner. It didn't take long for me to fall head over heels for him. He had a way of making me feel like the only woman in the room, and when he proposed 2 years later, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Our life together felt perfect, or at least I convinced myself it was. Lucas worked hard as a businessman, and I admired his drive. He promised me stability and security, and I believed him. I trusted him. When we found out I was pregnant, I thought it was the start of something beautiful. Lucas seemed excited. He talked about the nursery, the baby's future, and how we'd be the perfect family. But as my pregnancy progressed, I noticed changes in him. He started coming home later, claiming work was piling up. He became distant, cold even. I chalked it up to stress and told myself it was temporary. But it wasn't. I poured my energy into my work and preparing for our baby, trying to ignore the cracks forming in our relationship. I created art late into the night, pouring my hopes and dreams for our child into every stroke of color. I kept telling myself that once Noah arrived, everything would fall into place. When Noah was born, I thought that moment would heal the distance between Lucas and me. Instead, it revealed the depth of his indifference. Noah came into the world too soon, his tiny body fragile and fighting. The doctors informed me that our son had a critical heart condition and needed immediate surgery to survive. As I sat in the hospital room, staring at the love of my life in that crib, my heart broke in ways I didn't know were possible. I was terrified for my son, but I held on to the hope that Lucas would step up, that he would be the husband and father I believed him to be. I was wrong. I'll never forget the way he looked at me when I called him, begging him to help me raise the money for Noah's surgery. His voice was cold, detached. "Sophia, I don't have the time or money for sick people. Handle it yourself." Those words were a dagger to my heart. This was the man I had trusted with my life, the father of my child. How could he be so cruel? But I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. No one needed me, and I wasn't going to let him down. I sold everything of value I owned, my gold necklace, my designer laptop, and even my favorite pieces of artwork that I had poured my soul into. I borrowed money from a trusted friend I had met online, who lent me the last bit I needed without hesitation. Somehow, I managed to gather the $200,000 needed for Noah's surgery. The operation was a success. I sat in that hospital waiting room for what felt like an eternity, praying for my baby's life. When the doctor finally came out and said the surgery went well, I collapsed into tears of relief. For the next few days, I stayed by Noah's side, watching him grow stronger with each passing moment. His tiny fingers curled around mine, and I promised him that I would never let anyone hurt him again. I thought Lucas's indifference during Noah's crisis was the worst betrayal I could experience. But I was wrong. The real nightmare began the day I returned home, hoping for a reconciliation, only to find Lucas had moved on and left us behind. Returning home with Noah in my arms, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. The past few days at the hospital had been grueling, but knowing that my son's surgery had been successful gave me the strength to carry on. I convinced myself that Lucas's coldness was just a reaction to stress, that he would apologize once he saw how fragile our situation had been. As I walked up to the house, I noticed Lucas's car parked in the driveway. Relief washed over me. He was home. Maybe he was ready to explain, to make amends, to step into the role of a father that Noah so desperately needed. With Noah cradled in my arms, I opened the door. The warmth of the house greeted me, but it felt off foreign. The lights were on in the living room, and I could hear soft laughter, a woman's laughter. My heart sank, but I forced myself to move forward. There they were. Lucas was standing close to a woman I had never seen before. She was tall, with striking features and an air of smug confidence. Her perfectly styled hair and flawless makeup only emphasized the disdain in her eyes when she looked at me. Lucas stood beside her, his posture casual, as though nothing was out of place. "Lucas?" I called out, my voice trembling. He turned, and for a moment his expression faltered. But it wasn't guilt I saw in his eyes. It was annoyance. The woman beside him smirked, her red lips curling as though she found my presence amusing. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice rising despite my exhaustion. Lucas sighed, as if I were a nuisance interrupting his evening. "Sophia, this is Rachel," he said, gesturing toward the woman. "We're together now." I froze, the words not fully registering. Together? What was he talking about? My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I was hearing. "Lucas," I said, clutching Noah tighter, "I just came back from the hospital with our son, your son. Do you even care about what he's been through?" "What I've been through?" He shrugged, his face devoid of any emotion. "Sophia, I've made my decision. I don't have the time or energy for this. You and the baby can manage on your own." The room seemed to spin around me. I could hardly believe the cruelty in his words. "Manage on our own?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Lucas, he's your son. He almost died, and you weren't there. How can you do this to us?" Rachel stepped forward, her tone mockingly sweet. "Sophia, it's not personal. Lucas and I have something you just don't understand." Her words were like salt in a wound, and I could feel my anger bubbling to the surface. "How dare you?" I snapped, my voice trembling with rage. "I sold everything, my jewelry, my laptop, my art, just to save our son's life, while you stood by and did nothing. And now you're telling me this?" Lucas didn't flinch. "That's your problem, Sophia. Not mine." He walked to the door, opened it, and gestured outside. "You need to leave. Your things are packed. They're on the porch. This is Rachel's home now." I stared at him, my heart shattering into pieces. "You're throwing us out?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "Where are we supposed to go, Lucas? This is Noah's home." "It's my house," he said coldly. "You'll figure it out." Rachel smirked from the doorway, her arms crossed as she leaned casually against the frame. "Good luck, Sophia," she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. I looked down at Noah, who was stirring softly in my arms. His tiny face was so innocent, so unaware of the betrayal we had just endured. That gave me the strength to lift my head, even as tears blurred my vision. "You'll regret this, Lucas," I said, my voice steady despite the pain. "You're a coward, and one day, you'll pay for what you've done." Lucas didn't respond. He simply shut the door, leaving me standing in the cold night with nowhere to go. For a moment, I stood there, clutching Noah tightly, my mind racing. But I couldn't allow myself to crumble, not now. Pulling out my phone, I called the only person I could trust. "Grace," I said through my tears, "he threw us out. Me and Noah. I don't know what to do." Grace didn't hesitate. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you." As I waited, the cold night seemed to seep into my bones, but I refused to let despair take hold. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. I had Noah, and I would fight for him with everything I had. Lucas might have slammed the door on us, but he had no idea what he had ignited within me. When Grace arrived, she wrapped me in a tight hug, whispering words of comfort. "You're safe now, Sophia," she said firmly. "Let's get you and Noah somewhere warm." As we drove away, I looked at the house for what I knew would be the last time. I didn't feel sadness anymore, only resolve. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my fight for justice. The soft hum of Grace's car was the only sound as we drove to the women's shelter where she worked. Noah was asleep in my arms, his tiny breaths a steady rhythm that gave me strength. Grace glanced at me occasionally, her face a mix of concern and quiet determination. When we arrived, she led me inside and wrapped me in a warm blanket. The shelter was small but welcoming, with cheerful walls and a sense of safety that I hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time since Noah's birth, I allowed myself to exhale. "You're safe now," Grace said, placing a cup of tea in front of me. "We'll figure this out together." That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lucas's cold expression, heard Rachel's mocking laughter, and felt the door slam in my face. But as the hours ticked by, my despair began to shift into something else: determination. Lucas had betrayed me and our son in ways I couldn't yet fully process, but I knew one thing: I wouldn't let him get away with it. The next morning, Grace found me sitting in the small communal kitchen, feeding Noah his bottle. "You've been up all night, haven't you?" she asked, sitting across from me. I nodded. "I can't stop thinking about it." "About him? How could he do this to us, Grace? How could he just throw us away?" Grace reached across the table and took my hand. "Sophia, I don't think Lucas is just a bad husband. There's something more to this. Men like him don't just walk away from their families without a reason." Her words struck a chord. Deep down, I had suspected for months that something wasn't right. Lucas's late nights, his unexplained absences, the way he had become increasingly distant, it all pointed to something bigger than just infidelity. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice trembling. Grace leaned closer, her expression serious. "I think he's hiding something. And I know someone who can help us find out." Later that day, I met Ethan, a private investigator Grace trusted. He was in his early 40s, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. I felt a flicker of hope as he listened to my story, taking notes with meticulous precision. "I'll look into it," he said. "If Lucas is hiding something, I'll find it." The next few days were a blur of caring for Noah and waiting for Ethan's findings. Grace stayed by my side, offering support and encouragement. Noah's tiny giggles and soft coos were my anchor, reminding me that no matter how hard things got, I had to keep moving forward. 1 week later, Ethan called. "I have some information," he said. "Meet me at the shelter." And Sophia, brace yourself. Ethan arrived with a folder tucked under his arm, his expression grim. As Grace and I sat across from him in the shelter's small office, my heart pounded in my chest. "What did you find?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan placed the folder on the table and opened it, revealing a stack of photos, documents, and transaction records. "Lucas isn't just having an affair," he began. "He's involved in criminal activities, fraud, money laundering, and using his business as a front for illegal operations." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You're saying Lucas is a criminal?" I asked, struggling to process the information. Ethan nodded. "And Rachel isn't just his mistress. She's his accomplice. They've been working together for years, funneling money into offshore accounts and defrauding clients." Grace squeezed my hand as I stared at the evidence, my mind racing. Lucas hadn't just betrayed me and Noah. He had built his entire life on lies. "What do I do?" I asked, looking between Ethan and Grace. Grace's expression hardened. "You fight back. We take this to the authorities, and we make sure Lucas and Rachel face justice." Ethan nodded. "The evidence is solid, but we'll need a good lawyer to build a strong case. Do you know anyone?" Grace smiled. "I know someone. Let me make a call." That evening, I met Megan, a sharp and confident lawyer with a reputation for taking down powerful men like Lucas. She listened intently as I told her everything, from Lucas's refusal to help save Noah to the discovery of his crimes. "You've been through hell," Megan said, her voice steady. "But we're going to turn this around. With Ethan's evidence and your testimony, we can expose Lucas's crimes and ensure you and Noah get the justice you deserve." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Lucas had tried to break me, but he had underestimated my strength. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for my son. And I wouldn't stop until Lucas paid for what he had done. The days following my meeting with Megan were a whirlwind of preparation. She wasted no time filing for an emergency order to secure custody of Noah and protect us from Lucas. Meanwhile, Ethan coordinated with local authorities, ensuring the evidence against Lucas and Rachel was airtight. At the women's shelter, Grace became my pillar of strength. She kept me focused, reminding me that every step forward was a step closer to justice. I spent my days caring for Noah and my nights reviewing documents and preparing statements with Megan. It was exhausting, but it gave me purpose. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking control of my life. One evening, as I fed Noah his bottle, Grace sat beside me with a warm smile. "You're doing amazing, Sophia," she said. "Not everyone could handle all of this and still keep it together." I glanced down at Noah, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine. "I don't have a choice," I said softly. "He's my reason for everything. I have to do this for him." Grace placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "And you're not alone. We're all here for you." Her words gave me strength. I knew I couldn't have made it this far without Grace, Megan, and Ethan. They had become my family in a way Lucas never could. The turning point came when Ethan uncovered new evidence, a fraudulent property deal Lucas and Rachel were finalizing at one of Lucas's business properties. It was a golden opportunity to catch them red-handed. "We've coordinated with law enforcement," Ethan explained during a late-night meeting at the shelter. "Tomorrow, we're raiding the property. If everything goes according to plan, we'll have enough to ensure Lucas and Rachel face serious prison time." My heart pounded as I listened. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. The chance to ensure Lucas could never hurt anyone else the way he had hurt me and Noah. The next morning, I anxiously waited for news of the raid. Grace stayed by my side, keeping me calm as we cared for Noah together. Hours felt like days until Ethan finally called. "It's done," he said, his voice steady. "Lucas and Rachel have been arrested. We caught them in the act, and the evidence is irrefutable." Relief washed over me, and I sank into the nearest chair. "Thank you, Ethan," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." "It's not over yet," he said. "We still have the trial, but this is a huge step forward. You've got this, Sophia." As I ended the call, tears streamed down my face, not of sadness, but of relief. Lucas's perfect facade had crumbled, and justice was finally within reach. That evening, I held Noah close as I sat on the shelter's small couch. He looked up at me with his wide, curious eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to imagine a future for us. A future without fear, without betrayal. A future filled with hope. "We're going to be okay," I whispered to him. "I promise." The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt like I was winning. With Grace, Megan, and Ethan by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. Lucas had tried to break me, but he had only made me stronger. The air was heavy with tension as Megan, Ethan, and Grace sat with me in the small conference room at the women's shelter. A stack of documents lay on the table before us, evidence of Lucas's deceit, betrayal, and crimes. Noah slept peacefully in his crib nearby, unaware of the storm brewing around us. Ethan cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Sophia, we've gathered everything we need. Lucas and Rachel's fraudulent activities are deeper than we initially thought." My stomach churned. "What do you mean?" Ethan spread out the documents, revealing bank statements, property records, and offshore account details. Lucas has been running multiple schemes for years. Rachel isn't just his mistress, she's been his partner in crime. Together, they've embezzled millions, laundered money, and defrauded investors. Megan nodded, her expression firm. This evidence is damning, Sophia. Not only does it prove his criminal activities, but it also establishes a clear pattern of neglect and betrayal in his personal life. It's exactly what we need to win your case. As I stared at the mountain of evidence, a mix of emotions swirled within me: anger, betrayal, but also a deep sense of validation. Lucas's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was systemic. He had built his life on lies, and now it was all unraveling. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Megan worked tirelessly to strengthen our case, filing for divorce and full custody of Noah while ensuring the evidence against Lucas was submitted to the authorities. Ethan coordinated with law enforcement, providing detailed reports that left no room for doubt. Meanwhile, I focused on caring for Noah and regaining my strength. Grace was a constant presence, her unwavering support keeping me grounded. One evening, as we sat together in the shelter's common area, I voiced the question that had been haunting me. What if Lucas finds a way out of this? He always manages to manipulate his way out of trouble. Megan's voice was steady as she responded. Not this time, Sophia. The evidence is overwhelming, and with you as a witness, his charm won't save him. You've been through enough. It's time for him to face the consequences. Her confidence bolstered my resolve. I couldn't afford to doubt myself now, not when justice was so close. A week later, Ethan delivered the news I had been waiting for. The trial date is set. It's time to make your voice heard, Sophia. The weight of his words settled over me. I knew testifying against Lucas wouldn't be easy, but I also knew it was necessary. For Noah. For myself. For the life we deserved. I'm ready, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions within me. Let's do this. On the day of the trial, I stood outside the courthouse with Grace and Megan by my side. Ethan arrived moments later, his calm demeanor reassuring. We've got this, Sophia, he said. The evidence is solid. Just tell your truth. As we entered the courtroom, my heart raced. Lucas sat at the defendant's table, his face a mask of defiance. Rachel was beside him, her smug confidence faltering under the weight of the charges against them. Megan began with a powerful opening statement, outlining Lucas's crimes and his betrayal of me and Noah. Her words cut through the courtroom like a knife, setting the tone for what was to come. When my turn came to testify, my legs felt like lead as I approached the stand. Swearing to tell the truth, I recounted everything. Lucas's cold indifference during Noah's crisis, his refusal to help, and the sacrifices I made to save our son. My voice trembled as I described returning home to find him with Rachel and his cruel decision to throw us out. The courtroom was silent as I spoke, every eye on me. Drawing strength from Noah's presence in the gallery, I answered Megan's questions with honesty and determination. Lucas's defense tried to paint him as a misunderstood businessman, claiming I had exaggerated his actions. But Megan was relentless, dismantling their arguments piece by piece. The evidence was undeniable, and even Rachel's testimony under pressure revealed the full extent of their crimes. By the end of the trial, it was clear that Lucas and Rachel's web of lies had unraveled. The judge's verdict was firm. Lucas and Rachel were found guilty of multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and neglect. Lucas was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, and Rachel faced her own significant punishment. The court also granted me full custody of Noah, along with access to Lucas's remaining legal assets to ensure our future stability. As we left the courtroom, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Grace hugged me tightly, her eyes filled with pride. You did it, Sophia, she said. You stood up for yourself, and Noah. Ethan nodded, his serious demeanor softened by satisfaction. Justice has been served. I looked down at Noah, his tiny hand clutching mine. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Lucas's betrayal had broken me, but it had also made me stronger. This wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of a new life for me and my son. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with tension as I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Megan. Across the room, Lucas and Rachel sat together, their confidence waning as the trial progressed. Lucas had always been composed and smug, But today, there was a stiffness in his posture. Rachel, once so self-assured, avoided making eye contact with anyone. Noah was safely in the gallery with Grace, his soft coos occasionally breaking the silence. Knowing he was there gave me strength. I wasn't just fighting for justice. I was fighting for his future. Megan began the proceedings with a searing opening statement. She outlined Lucas's refusal to help save his son, his betrayal of our family, and the mountain of evidence tying him to fraudulent activities. Her voice was clear and commanding, every word slicing through Lucas's facade. The defendant, Lucas Johnson, Megan declared, not only abandoned his wife and newborn son in their darkest hour but also engaged in years of illegal activities, exploiting others for his own gain. This case is not just about fraud, it's about accountability for the lives he has destroyed. As her words hung in the air, I glanced at Lucas. His usual confidence had faltered, replaced by a grim determination to weather the storm. But this was one storm he wouldn't escape. When my turn came to testify, my legs felt heavy as I approached the stand. Swearing to tell the truth, I took a deep breath and began recounting my story. I loved Lucas, I started, my voice trembling but steady. I trusted him with my life and the life of our child. When our son, Noah, was born prematurely, he needed immediate surgery to survive. The doctors told us it would cost $200,000. I begged Lucas to help, but he refused. The courtroom was silent as I continued, tears streaming down my face. He told me he didn't have time or money for sick people. Those were his exact words. So I sold everything I had, my mother's necklace, my laptop, even my artwork, to save our son's life. Lucas abandoned us when we needed him most. Megan guided me through my testimony, asking questions that allowed me to paint a full picture of Lucas's betrayal. I described returning home after Noah's surgery to find Lucas with Rachel and his heartless decision to throw me and our newborn son out of the house. The defense tried to rattle me, suggesting that Lucas's actions were a result of stress or that I was exaggerating the situation. But Megan was relentless, countering every claim with evidence. At one point, Megan presented a series of text messages from Lucas, where he dismissed my pleas for help during Noah's illness. The courtroom murmured as the messages were read aloud, each one highlighting his cruelty. The most damning moment came when Megan called Rachel to the stand. Under pressure, Rachel admitted her involvement in Lucas's illegal activities. Her testimony exposed the full extent of their schemes, from money laundering to fraudulent property deals. Lucas's face turned pale as Rachel detailed their crimes, implicating him further. By the time the closing arguments were made, the evidence against Lucas and Rachel was overwhelming. Megan's final words resonated through the courtroom. This is a case of profound betrayal, both personal and financial. Sophia fought to save her son while Lucas chose to pursue greed and deceit. Justice demands accountability, not just for Sophia and Noah, but for everyone Lucas and Rachel have harmed. The judge's verdict came swiftly. Lucas and Rachel were found guilty of multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and neglect. Lucas was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and Rachel received a 10-year sentence. Additionally, the court awarded me full custody of Noah and access to Lucas's remaining legal assets to secure our future. As the gavel struck, relief washed over me. Justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, I held Noah tightly, his tiny hand clutching mine. Grace and Megan stood beside me, their faces glowing with pride. "You did it," Grace said, wrapping me in a hug. "You stood up for yourself and for Noah." Megan nodded, her calm demeanor unwavering. "This is just the beginning, Sophia. You've secured justice, but now it's time to build the life you and Noah deserve." As I looked at my son, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. Lucas had tried to destroy me, but instead, he had made me stronger. This was our new beginning, and I was ready for it. The courthouse felt quieter as I stepped outside, the crowd of reporters and onlookers slowly dispersing after the verdict. For months, I had carried the weight of Lucas's betrayal, the fear for Noah's future, and the uncertainty of what was to come. But now, as the sun warmed my face, I felt lighter, as if the shackles of his lies had finally fallen away. Grace stood beside me, her arm looped through mine, while Megan walked slightly ahead, her phone buzzing with messages from colleagues congratulating her on the victory. Noah was nestled in my arms, his tiny body rising and falling with each peaceful breath. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. "You're free now, Sophia," Grace said, squeezing my hand. "Truly free." Her words hit me in a way I hadn't expected.
Free.
It felt foreign, almost unreal. But as I looked at Noah's sleeping face, I knew she was right. This wasn't just about justice. It was about reclaiming my life and giving my son the future he deserved. Inside his prison cell, Lucas would no longer enjoy the comforts of the life he had built on lies. His reputation, once polished and envied, was now tarnished beyond repair. Friends and business associates distanced themselves, unwilling to be tied to his disgrace. His downfall had been swift, but it was deserved. Rachel, too, faced her own punishment. Her confident smirk had long since faded, replaced by the reality of her own lengthy prison sentence. Together, they had tried to destroy my family, but justice had prevailed. In the weeks following the trial, I focused on rebuilding. With Megan's help, I navigated the legal complexities of accessing Lucas's remaining legal assets, ensuring that Noah's future was secure. Grace helped me find a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a place where Noah and I could start fresh. The apartment wasn't large, but it was ours. I decorated it with a few personal items I had left, adding touches of warmth and love to every corner. Noah's nursery became my sanctuary, a space filled with soft blues, whimsical stars, and the promise of a better tomorrow. Volunteering at the women's shelter became a cornerstone of my healing journey. Grace had been my lifeline, and now I wanted to be that for other women. Every time I listened to someone's story or helped them take a step forward, I felt my own strength grow. One evening, after tucking Noah into bed, I sat in the living room with Grace. She sipped her tea, a smile playing on her lips. "You've come so far, Sophia," she said. "You've turned this nightmare into something beautiful." I nodded, my gaze drifting to the baby monitor, where Noah's soft breaths played like a melody. "I have to. For him. And for myself." Grace set her cup down and leaned forward. "What's next for you?" I smiled, the answer coming easily. "I want to build my business again. Not just to support Noah, but to show him that we're stronger than anything life throws at us." The journey hadn't been easy, but I had emerged stronger. Lucas's betrayal had nearly broken me, but it had also revealed a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. My love for Noah had carried me through the darkest moments, and now, as I watched him grow and thrive, I felt a sense of purpose that couldn't be shaken. This was just the beginning. A new chapter filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. For Noah and for me, the apartment was quiet, save for the soft hum of the baby monitor. Noah slept peacefully in his crib, his tiny hands curled into fists. I sat on the couch, a warm cup of tea in my hands, staring at the vision board I had pinned to the wall. It was filled with images and quotes that represented the life I wanted to build, a life filled with hope, independence, and love. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to dream. Rebuilding my freelance graphic design business became my primary focus. Grace helped me set up a small home office in the corner of the living room, complete with a new laptop that I had purchased using the assets secured from Lucas's legal funds. It felt empowering to design again, to create something that was mine. Every evening, after Noah fell asleep, I would sit at my desk, sketching designs and reaching out to former clients. Slowly but surely, the work started to come in. Each project felt like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming my identity and independence. Volunteering at the women's shelter remained close to my heart. I spent several hours each week speaking with women who were navigating their own struggles. Sharing my story wasn't just therapeutic, it was a way to inspire others to find their strength. One afternoon, a young mother approached me after a group session. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her voice was steady. Your story gives me hope, she said. If you can rebuild your life, so can I. Her words stayed with me, a reminder of how far I had come. Grace often said that helping others was one of the best ways to heal, and she was right. With every woman I supported, I felt a piece of my broken heart mend. Noah thrived in our new life. His laughter filled the apartment, a sound that never failed to lift my spirits. Watching him grow and explore the world reminded me of why I had fought so hard. He was my anchor, my purpose, and my greatest joy. One evening, as I rocked him to sleep, he reached out and touched my face, his wide eyes full of trust and love. "Mama," he whispered, his first word. Tears streamed down my face as I held him close. "I love you, Noah," I whispered back. More than anything. While I moved forward, Lucas's life crumbled further. Word of his crimes and betrayal spread quickly, leaving him isolated and disgraced. In prison, he faced the consequences of his actions, not just legally, but emotionally. The charm and confidence that had once defined him were gone, replaced by a man grappling with the weight of his choices. I didn't waste time thinking about Lucas, but on the rare occasions that he crossed my mind, I felt no anger, only pity. He had destroyed his own life in pursuit of greed and selfishness, and he would have to live with that for the rest of his days. Months turned into a year, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. My business flourished, providing me with financial stability. Noah grew stronger and happier with each passing day. And I found peace in the little moments, cooking dinner, reading bedtime stories, and watching the sunset from our balcony. One evening, as Grace and I sat together on the couch, she looked at me with a smile. "You've come a long way, Sophia." I nodded, a smile spreading across my face. "And I'm just getting started." Sitting in the quiet of my living room after Noah had fallen asleep, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for justice, it had all shaped me into the person I was now. Stronger, wiser, unstoppable. As I looked at my vision board, one quote stood out. "Every ending is a new beginning." This was our new beginning, mine and Noah's. A life filled with love, resilience, and hope. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. The gentle hum of Noah's laughter filled our small apartment as I sat on the floor with him, watching him attempt to stack his colorful blocks. His giggles were infectious, and I couldn't help but smile. This was the life I had fought for, a life of peace, filled with love and possibilities. The shadows of the past were still there, but they no longer controlled me. Grace and Megan joined us that evening for dinner. They had been my constant support system through everything, and tonight we were celebrating, a celebration of survival, resilience, and new beginnings. As we sat around the modest dining table, Grace raised her glass. "To Sophia," she said, her voice brimming with pride. "You've not only rebuilt your life, but created something beautiful for yourself and Noah. You're an inspiration." I blushed, looking down at my plate. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," I replied, my voice filled with gratitude. "No," Megan interjected firmly. "You did this, Sophia. You fought for your son, for justice, and for your future. Don't ever forget that." Their words settled over me, filling me with a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. They were right, I had fought. And I had won. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself dreaming of new goals. My freelance graphic design business was thriving, and I began exploring ways to expand it. I wanted to create a space where other women, especially single mothers, could find work and financial independence. One afternoon, as Noah napped, I sketched out the beginnings of what I envisioned, a collaborative platform for creative freelancers. The idea excited me, and I knew it was the next step in our journey. Volunteering at the women's shelter continued to be a vital part of my life. Every time I shared my story or listened to another woman's struggles, I felt a deep sense of connection. We were all survivors, each of us fighting our own battles and reclaiming our lives. One day, a young woman approached me after a session. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her voice was strong. "Thank you for sharing your story," she said. "It gives me hope that I can start over too." Her words reminded me why I had chosen to share my journey. Healing wasn't just about moving forward, it was about reaching back to help others do the same. Though I rarely thought of Lucas, I couldn't completely ignore the updates I occasionally received through Ethan. His life in prison was far from the luxury he had once enjoyed. His reputation was in ruins, and he faced years of isolation and regret. One day, Megan informed me that Lucas had requested to see me. "It's entirely your choice," she said, her tone neutral. "But you owe him nothing." I didn't hesitate. "No," I said firmly. "I've closed that chapter. I don't need to hear his excuses." And with that decision, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. Lucas no longer had power over me. On Noah's first birthday, we held a small celebration in the park. Grace, Megan, and a few close friends joined us, bringing laughter and joy to the day. Watching Noah attempt to smash his birthday cake was a moment of pure happiness, a reminder of how far we had come. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I held Noah in my arms and looked out over the horizon. The future felt limitless, filled with opportunities and love. That night, after Noah had fallen asleep, I sat by the window, gazing at the stars. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain, the betrayal, the fight for justice. Each moment, no matter how difficult, had shaped me into the person I was now. I no longer felt anger or bitterness. Instead, I felt gratitude. Gratitude for the strength I had discovered within myself, for the love I shared with my son, and for the people who had stood by me. This was our life now, one built on resilience, hope, and endless possibilities. As I closed my eyes, a single thought filled my heart. We made it, Noah. This is just the beginning.